My name is Emily, and for most of my life, I believed family was supposed to be the one place where you felt safe. A place where love came without conditions, where mistakes were forgiven, and where blood truly meant thicker than water. But sometimes, blood is just red. It doesn't mean loyalty. It doesn't mean kindness. And in my case, it didn't even mean respect. I want to tell you about the day I found out what my brother really thought of me. And the worst part? I didn't hear it from his mouth in a fight. I didn't overhear him talking to a friend. Number. He sent it to me. By accident. A voice note that was never meant to land in my inbox. A voice note that shattered every illusion I had about the bond we shared. My brother, let's call him Daniel, is just 2 years older than me. As kids, we were inseparable. We built pillow forts in the living room, played hide and seek in the backyard, and made secret plans about how we'd run away to the circus if school got too boring. I remember the way he used to hold my hand when we crossed the street, like he was my little protector. And when kids at school teased me for being shy, Daniel would puff out his chest and tell them to leave me alone. For a long time, I thought, this is it. This is what having a brother means. It means having someone who will stand beside you, no matter what. But somewhere along the way, things changed. It wasn't sudden. It was little comments here and there. The first time he rolled his eyes when I tried to join him and his friends playing video games. The way he started calling me weird instead of funny. Or the times he'd tell me to stop embarrassing him when I was just trying to be included. At first, I brushed it off. Siblings tease each other, right? That's normal. But over the years, his teasing stopped being playful and started cutting deeper. When I got good grades, he'd mutter, "Teacher's pet." When I tried makeup for the first time, he smirked, "Trying too hard." And when I made a joke at dinner, he'd laugh louder than anyone else. Not because it was funny, but because he wanted everyone to know how cringe I was. The protector from my childhood was gone. In his place stood someone who seemed embarrassed to share my last name. The worst part? My parents rarely noticed. To them, Daniel was the golden boy. Charismatic, charming, always the center of attention. When he cracked jokes at my expense, they laughed. When he brushed me off, they told me, "Don't take it so seriously, Em. That's just how brothers are." But it didn't feel like just how brothers are. It felt like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Small, constant reminders that no matter how hard I tried, I'd never be good enough in his eyes. Still, I clung to hope. Because deep down, I thought maybe it was just a phase. Maybe one day my brother would remember the forts, the hide and seek, the promises. Maybe one day, he'd see me again. That hope finally shattered on a Tuesday night. I was curled up on my bed, scrolling through my phone, when a notification popped up. It was a voice note from Daniel. At first, I smiled. He never sent me voice notes. Maybe he finally wanted to talk? Maybe this was his way of reaching out? I hit play. What came out of the speaker made my stomach drop. It was his voice. All right. But he wasn't talking to me. He was talking about me. Ugh, my sister is so annoying. I swear, every time she opens her mouth, it's like nails on a chalkboard. She's pathetic, always acting like she's the victim. Honestly, I don't know how anyone stands being around her. He laughed. Actually laughed. And in the background, I heard another voice, one of his friends, laughing along with him. The message was only 30 seconds long, but it felt like an eternity. Each word burned, carving itself into me like a scar I couldn't erase. When it ended, I just sat there, staring at my phone, my hands trembling. At first, I thought maybe it was a prank. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe he was drunk, or joking, or something. But then I replayed it, and replayed it again. There was no mistaking the tone in his voice, the disgust, the contempt. The way he said pathetic, like it was the truest thing he'd ever spoken. He hadn't meant for me to hear it, but I had. And in that moment, the fragile hope I'd been holding on to all those years snapped. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the words echoing in my mind. Annoying, pathetic, victim. I thought about all the times I'd defended him, all the times I'd told my friends, he's not really like that. He just jokes too much. All the times I'd forgiven him because I wanted to believe he still cared. And I realized he didn't. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. It wasn't just a voice note. It was the truth I hadn't wanted to see. And once you hear the truth, you can't unhear it. When you hear something like that, your own brother mocking you, it doesn't just sting in the moment. It forces you to rewind your entire life, combing through every memory, every interaction, wondering, was it always like this? Did I just ignore the signs? And the truth is, the signs were always there. I just didn't want to believe them. Growing up, Daniel and I were only 2 years apart, which meant we did almost everything together. At first, it was simple things. Sharing toys, running around in the backyard, sneaking cookies when mom wasn't looking. I used to think those were the happiest days of my life, but even back then, little cracks were starting to show. I remember one Christmas when I was about 8. I had worked so hard on a drawing for him, our family sitting under a tree, with "Best Brother" written at the top. I wrapped it up in shiny paper and gave it to him, practically bursting with pride. He unwrapped it, looked at it for half a second, then tossed it aside. "Cool," he muttered, before ripping into the video game our parents had bought him. I sat there, holding my breath, waiting for him to come back to my gift. To at least say, "Thank you." But he never did. That was the first time I felt invisible to him, and it wouldn't be the last. Things only got worse once school started to highlight our differences. Daniel was always the funny one, the kid who could make a whole classroom laugh with a single joke. Teachers loved him, classmates adored him, and he never seemed to have to try. Me? I was the quiet one. I stayed out of trouble, got good grades, and lived in the shadow of his charisma. When we were younger, he'd sometimes use that spotlight to protect me. If kids teased me for being shy, he'd tell them to back off. But as we got older, he realized he could use it to humiliate me instead. I'll never forget the time in middle school when we ended up at the same lunch table. I was nervous, trying to fit in with his friends. I made a joke. Nothing amazing, but enough to get a smile or two. Daniel rolled his eyes and said loudly, "God, Emily, you're so cringe. Don't try so hard." The whole table laughed. Not with me. At me. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole, and from that day on, I learned to keep my mouth shut whenever he was around. What made it worse was how my parents handled things. You see, Daniel was their golden child. Not because he was perfect. He wasn't. He got in trouble at school, slacked off on homework, and mouthed off constantly. But he had charm, and that charm blinded them. Whenever he joked at my expense, they laughed along. Whenever he dismissed me, they told me not to take it so seriously. And whenever I tried to defend myself, they told me I was overreacting. It was like living in a play where I was cast as the punchline. And the cruelest part? Sometimes I started to believe them. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was embarrassing. Maybe if I just tried harder, Daniel would like me again. High school was the breaking point. Daniel blossomed into the stereotypical popular guy. Sports, parties, endless streams of friends who practically worshipped him. Me? I found comfort in books, art, and a few close friends. I wasn't cool in the traditional sense, and Daniel made sure I knew it. Once, I came home excited about winning an art competition. I showed him my certificate, expecting at least a nod of approval. He smirked and said, "Congrats, Em. Too bad nobody cares about art. Maybe one day you'll win something that actually matters." It was like that every time. Every little victory of mine was just fuel for another one of his dismissive comments. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in a world where my brother saw me not as a sibling, but as a joke. What made it even more painful was the gap between what I remembered from childhood, the protector, the playmate, and the reality I was living now. I'd look at old photos of us, grinning with ice cream, laughing in matching pajamas, and wonder, where did he go? When did my brother disappear? I tried to talk to my parents about it once. I told them how his words made me feel, how I felt like he hated me. My mom sighed and said, "Siblings fight, Emily. Don't let it get to you." My dad chuckled, "That's just how brothers are. He teases you because he loves you." But it didn't feel like love. It felt like slow poison dripping into my veins day after day. By the time I reached college, I had become a master of pretending. At family gatherings, I smiled through his jokes. At dinners, I laughed along when he made me the punchline. And in front of friends, I defended him, painting him as the typical teasing brother. But behind closed doors, I cried. A lot. I cried because I missed the boy who used to hold my hand. I cried because I couldn't understand why his love had turned into contempt. And I cried because no matter how much it hurt, I still wanted his approval. That's the thing about family. You can be hurt 1,000 times, but part of you still longs for acceptance. Which brings me back to that night. When I got that notification, when I saw Daniel's name pop up on my phone, my heart actually skipped a beat. Because even after everything, I still hoped. I still thought maybe, just maybe, he was reaching out. Maybe he wanted to apologize. Maybe he wanted to talk. Maybe he remembered the forts and the promises. But instead, I got the truth. Raw, unfiltered, undeniable. And that truth was this. My brother didn't just tease me, he didn't just joke around, he despised me. And he had no problem broadcasting it to his friends. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't lived it. When a stranger insults you, it stings, but you move on. When a friend betrays you, it cuts deep, but you can walk away. But when it's family, when it's your own brother, the pain is different. It's heavier. Because it's not just about the insult itself. It's about the years of love you poured in, the loyalty you showed, the hope you carried. It's about realizing that the person who is supposed to stand beside you has been standing against you all along. That's what the voice note did. It wasn't just 30 seconds of audio. It was 20 years of betrayal crystallized into words I could never unhear. And as much as it hurt, it also woke me up. Because after that night, I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't keep playing the role of the invisible sister, the family punchline. Something inside me snapped, and that's when everything changed. I must have replayed that voice note a dozen times, each time hoping I'd misheard him. Each time wishing the words would rearrange themselves into something less cruel. But they didn't. They stayed the same. Harsh. Mocking. Unmistakably real. At first I froze. My phone sat in my palm, glowing, but I couldn't move. Then the emotions came in waves. First, shock, then confusion, then anger, and finally, grief. Because that's what it felt like mourning the loss of the brother I thought I had. I curled up on my bed, tears slipping down my face, the voice note still echoing in my mind. Pathetic. Annoying. Victim. Each word replayed like a cruel mantra, burrowing deeper into me. That night was endless. I tossed and turned, trying to decide what to do. Should I confront him? Should I delete the message and pretend I never heard it? Should I send it back to him and demand an explanation? I picked up my phone a dozen times, fingers hovering over the screen, ready to text, "Really, Daniel? Is this what you think of me?" But each time, I stopped. Because the truth was, I already knew the answer. He didn't say those things by mistake. He didn't sound joking. He meant every word. And if I confronted him, I knew exactly what would happen. He'd laugh. He'd call me dramatic. He'd say, "God, Emily, Can't you take a joke? And somehow, I'd end up being the problem. So instead, I stayed silent and let the words eat me alive. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My eyes were swollen from crying, my chest felt heavy, like a weight was pressing down on it. And for the first time, I didn't just feel hurt. I felt small. Like maybe Daniel had been right all along. Maybe I was pathetic. Maybe I was annoying. Maybe I was nothing more than the family embarrassment. That's the power of words, isn't it? They slip into your skin and start rewriting the way you see yourself. But life doesn't stop just because your heart shatters. At breakfast, I sat across from Daniel at the kitchen table. He was scrolling through his phone, laughing at something, completely carefree. I stared at him, wondering if he even realized what he'd done, wondering if he knew he'd sent that message to me instead of his friend. If he did, he didn't show it. When he finally looked up, he smirked. "What are you staring at, weirdo?" The words stabbed me, sharper than ever. Not because they were new, but because now I had proof of how much he meant them. And still, I smiled weakly and looked away, because that's what I'd been trained to do. For the next few days, I carried that voice note like a stone in my pocket. Heavy, unshakable. I replayed it in my head constantly. I analyzed every second, every laugh, every background noise. I tried to convince myself it wasn't that bad, but deep down, I knew it was worse than bad. It was the breaking point. You see, up until then, I'd always had a shred of doubt. A little voice that whispered, maybe he doesn't really mean it. Maybe he loves you, deep down. That voice died the second I heard him mocking me to his friend, because you don't say things like that about someone you love. You just don't. Part of me wanted revenge. Part of me wanted to blast that voice note through the house, force my parents to hear what their golden boy really thought of me. Another part of me wanted to scream at him, demand to know why he hated me so much. And yet, another part of me just wanted to disappear, to curl into myself and never risk being hurt again. The conflict inside me was unbearable. Do I fight? Do I flee? Do I finally stop pretending and let everyone see how broken I really am? In those days after the voice note, memories of the past came rushing back like a flood. The Christmas gift he tossed aside, the middle school lunch table, the art competition he mocked, the way our parents always laughed along instead of stepping in. I realized it wasn't just one voice note. It was a lifetime of being dismissed. That audio was just the final confirmation. I wish I could say I took it all calmly, that I rose above, stayed composed, handled it with maturity. But that's not the truth. The truth is, I was furious. Furious at Daniel for saying it. Furious at my parents for enabling him, and furious at myself for ever craving his approval. I slammed doors. I cried into pillows. I snapped at friends who asked if I was okay. I felt like I was unraveling, thread by thread. The hardest part, though, wasn't the anger. It was the loneliness, because I couldn't tell anyone. If I told my parents, they'd excuse it. If I told friends, they'd probably say, "That's just sibling stuff. Don't take it so hard." But it wasn't just sibling stuff. It was cruelty. It was betrayal. And nobody seemed to understand that. So I carried it alone. And let me tell you, there's nothing heavier than a secret that's killing you. One night, about a week after I got the voice note, I stood in front of my mirror, staring at myself. And something inside me shifted. For the first time, I wasn't just sad. I wasn't just angry. I was done. Done being the punchline. Done begging for scraps of respect. Done letting Daniel's words define who I was. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this. The Emily who silently endured everything was gone, and the Emily who replaced her. She was ready to fight back. When I said I was done being silent, I meant it, but deciding you're done and actually doing something about it, Those are two very different battles. For days, I played out different scenarios in my head. Do I sit Daniel down calmly and tell him how much he's hurt me? Do I scream at him, throw the words back in his face? Do I let my parents hear the voice note and finally force them to see the golden boy's cracks? Each option had risks. Each one terrified me. But deep down, I knew I couldn't go back to pretending. It happened one evening, almost by accident. We were both in the living room. Daniel was sprawled across the couch, scrolling through his phone, laughing at some meme. My parents were in the kitchen, close enough to overhear but not really paying attention. Something in me snapped. I opened my messages, pulled up the voice note, and pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the room. Ugh, my sister is so annoying. I swear, every time she opens her mouth, it's like nails on a chalkboard. She's pathetic, always acting like she's the victim. Honestly, I don't know how anyone stands being around her. The words echoed against the walls, bouncing back at him like a mirror. Daniel's head snapped up, his face drained of color. For once, he didn't have a smirk ready. "What the hell, Emily?" he shouted, scrambling to sit up. "Why are you playing that?" I stared straight at him, my voice steady. "Because I want everyone to hear what you really think of me." My parents rushed in from the kitchen, confused. "What's going on?" my mom asked, her eyes darting between us. I replayed the voice note again, louder this time. My dad frowned. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. And Daniel? He looked like he wanted to disappear. "God, Emily, you're so dramatic," he stammered. "It was a joke. I didn't mean it like that." But his voice cracked. His confidence was gone. I shook my head. "No, you meant it. You've meant it for years. This is just the first time I've had proof." He rolled his eyes, trying to recover his swagger. "You don't get it. That's just how friends talk. You wouldn't understand." I laughed bitterly. "You're right. I wouldn't understand. Because I don't make a hobby out of tearing down the people who are supposed to be family." For the first time in my life, my parents didn't laugh along with him. My mom's face was pale, her eyes wide with shame. My dad looked furious, but not at me. "Daniel," he snapped, "is this how you talk about your sister? Is this how you treat her when we're not around?" Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered, "It was just a joke." But the damage was done. For once, the golden boy's shine had dulled, and they saw it too. I could have stopped there. I could have let the voice note speak for itself. But years of bottled-up pain came rushing out. "You've made me feel worthless my entire life," I said, my voice shaking but strong. "Every joke at my expense, every time you dismissed me, every time you made me the punchline. And you know what the worst part is? I believed you. I believed I was pathetic. I believed I was nothing. All because of you." The room was silent. Even Daniel didn't have a comeback. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. The days that followed were strange. Daniel avoided me like the plague. He ate dinner quietly. No sarcastic remarks. No jabs. When our parents asked him questions, he gave short, clipped answers. It was like the voice note had stripped away his armor. My parents, on the other hand, started treating me differently. They asked how I was doing. They listened more. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time, I felt seen. And as for me, I felt lighter. Because the secret was out. The truth was no longer something I carried alone. But here's the part Daniel didn't see coming. I didn't just keep that voice note. I shared it. Not online, not in a cruel, public way, but with family members who always idolized him, with relatives who thought he could do no wrong. I let them hear exactly what he thought of me. And slowly, the golden image of Daniel began to crack. Cousins who once laughed at his jokes now looked at him differently. Aunts who praised him started asking me if I was okay. It wasn't about ruining him. It was about balance. For once, people saw the truth. That night, Lying in bed, I replayed the voice note one last time. But this time, it didn't hurt. It didn't sting. It didn't make me cry. Instead, it reminded me of how far I'd come. Because yes, Daniel thought I was pathetic. Yes, he mocked me. Yes, he tried to break me down. But I wasn't broken. Not anymore. I was stronger. And I had finally found my voice. For so long, I thought strength meant staying silent, taking the hits, laughing along, convincing myself that being the punchline was just part of being a sister. But I was wrong. Strength isn't silence. Strength is speaking when your voice shakes. Strength is holding up a mirror and forcing people to see the truth, even when it's ugly. After that confrontation, something shifted inside me. I stopped shrinking whenever Daniel walked into the room. I stopped replaying every cruel word in my head, wondering if he was right. And most importantly, I stopped craving his approval. Because the truth is, I don't need it. I don't need validation from someone who tears me down. I don't need to beg for scraps of respect from a brother who doesn't value me. What I need is myself. And finally, I had her back. My parents tried to patch things up between us. Daniel didn't mean it, my mom insisted once. He does love you in his own way. But I shook my head. No, love doesn't sound like that. Love doesn't make you feel worthless. It was the first time I said it out loud, and the words felt liberating. To their credit, my parents started to understand. They began checking in with me more, taking my side when Daniel tried to brush things off. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And as for Daniel, he never apologized. Not really. Oh, he muttered something about me taking it too seriously. But a real apology? One where he acknowledged the years of hurt? That never came. And maybe it never will. For a while, that thought crushed me. I wanted closure. I wanted him to say he was sorry, to admit he was wrong, to finally treat me like a sister instead of a joke. But then I realized, closure isn't something you wait for. It's something you create for yourself. I can't control Daniel. I can't force him to see me differently. But I can control me. And I choose not to let his words define me anymore. Looking back, I see now that the voice note was a gift in disguise. Painful, yes. Heartbreaking, absolutely. But also freeing, because it forced me to face the truth I'd been avoiding. It showed me who my brother really was. It showed me how much I'd been willing to shrink myself just to keep the peace. And it showed me that I am stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. Sometimes the truth hurts, but sometimes the truth sets you free. These days, I don't wait for Daniel's approval. I celebrate my wins, big or small, without needing his validation. I surround myself with friends who actually see me, who lift me up instead of tearing me down. And most importantly, I've learned to love the girl in the mirror, the one who survived years of being underestimated, the one who found her voice when it mattered most, the one who isn't pathetic or annoying or any of the names he tried to brand me with. She's me, and she's enough. If you're listening to this and you've ever been made to feel small by someone you love, hear me when I say this. You are not their words. You are not their cruelty. You are not their judgment. You are strong. You are worthy. And you deserve respect. No matter what anyone, even family, tells you. And as for Daniel, maybe one day he'll realize the damage he caused. Maybe one day he'll look back and regret the way he treated me. But by then, it won't matter. Because I'm no longer waiting for him to see my worth. I already see it myself.